We'll begin by clicking on the on-screen icon to start the pulse generator utility, and we get the splash screen followed by the status screen and the main start page. We can see that the pulse sequence generator is connected, but in fact it's not running. But we don't need it to be running to create a data file. To create a new data file, we're going to change the default from load an existing data file to enter new data. Then we're going to click on the next button, and that brings up the main selections page. On this page we answer some initial questions about what we want the data file to do. Do we want it to run both channels? Do we want it to link the output? Do we want it to invert the output? How many times do we want it to run? In this case, we're going to run both channels. Once we've enabled the channels, we can see that we have other options that we can choose. In this case, we're going to leave those options the way they are, except that we're going to go down and change the sequence to run continuously. Then we click on the next. On this page, the timing selections page, we select the time base that we want to use. The time base determines the minimum and the maximum pulse widths, and we'll select 1 Hz for both channels. Once we've done that, we click the next button again. Then we come to the hardware control page. This page determines what effect, if any, the external trigger will have on the operation of the pulse sequencer. We can have no effect with no hardware control, which means that the data will begin executing as soon as it's loaded into the pulse sequencer, or we can wait for an external trigger to start the pulse sequence, or we can wait for an external trigger to start and stop the sequence, or we can have an external trigger start and then pause the sequence and resume the sequence. In this case, we're going to go with no hardware control. We click next. Then we come to the initial delay page. We can leave this page as all zeros, which is the default for no delay, but we'll change it to select a 2-second delay for channel 1 and a 3-second delay for channel 2. Once we've done that, we'll click this next button again. Finally, we come to the on-off time selections page. While this page seems a little more complex looking than the other pages, it's actually fairly straightforward. We'll take it one step at a time, and we'll program the first pulse pair for channel 1 to have a 1 second on and a 1 second off time. Now we need to save these values, because though we've selected them, they're not saved. Now that value has been saved, and we're presented with the option of programming pulse pair number 2, but we won't do that. We'll go over to channel 2 and program its pulse pair number 1, again with 1 second on and 1 second off. Again, the data is not stored until we click Save. Now that we've advanced to pulse pair number 2 on channel 2, we'll enter some additional data, even though we don't intend to save it for the final file. We'll enter 2 seconds for pulse pair number 2 on and 1 second for the off pulse. We'll click the Save button, and notice that again we advance to pulse pair number 3, which we'll leave as zeros. And then we'll go to the Review button and review what we've programmed into channel 2. That brings up a form which says that for the pulse pairs what we've programmed in, and notice that for pulse pair number 1 the on time is 1 second and the off time is 1 second. For pulse pair number 2 it's 2 seconds on and 1 second off. So we can review what we've programmed in by clicking the Review button. Once we've done that, we can escape from this form by clicking the OK button. Now we'll go on to the next form by clicking Next, and this brings up the data review page. On the data review page we can see the results of our work. Notice that the file name at the top is only the directory name at this point because we haven't actually named the file. Also, the file description is the default pulse generator data file, and that's where we can actually describe this file and store it with the data so that when we bring the data back up in the future we have a short description of our file that we can quickly tell what it is. It's the only thing on this page that we can change. So I'll give the file a description. The file description is a little bit long, but we want to make sure that we give it something that we can recognize when we pull it up in the future. Now on the data review page we can also check the pulse pairs again in an abbreviated fashion. So let's go down on channel 2 where it says pulse pair number 1 and verify that pulse pair number 2 is in fact programmed. So we can see that pulse pair number 2 is programmed, but we really don't want that second pulse pair. So we'll go back to the on-off selections page by clicking the back button. On the on-off selections page we can actually delete the data, and so we'll go to pulse pair number 2, and we'll hit the delete button. And as we can see, the data has been deleted for pulse pair number 2. So now let's go back to the data review page. Now we can save our data by creating our own data file, which can be recalled again in the future. So we hit the Save Data button. This brings up the Specify Destination File Name page, where we're asked to give our new data a file name. Once we've typed in a file name, we click the Save button. The data is stored with a .pgd suffix indicating it's a pulse generator data file. Notice that on the data review page we now do have a file name instead of just a directory name. Now we can transmit the file to the pulse generator for execution, or we can start over if we want to edit the file, or if we want to create another new file we can again do that by starting over. But in this case we're done, so we'll select Quit, and it asks us if we do really want to quit, and so we'll acknowledge with a yes. Now to view this file in action, you can view the video that's labeled Using the Pulse Sequence Generator to Control a 2-Channel Relay Board.